find what your next mission is. Go find whatever your next mission is. And I don't care what it is, but it has to be something. When people are not going anywhere, when they're failing, when they don't have the drive, it's because they're not accepting responsibility for anything. And so my way of saying that is like, you need a new mission. You need to be responsible for something, and you need to go and move towards some new mission.
In terms of finding your purpose, that seems like it's the first step, is getting comfortable with yourself, understanding that. How do we take that next step towards finding that purpose?
Yeah, so for me, I define it as your passion is for you, your purpose is for others. So your purpose is when you use your passion to serve others. That's the link. So for me, the focus actually first becomes, what's your passion? Like, what are you passionate about? What do you enjoy doing? And then the parts that's usually missed. So everyone hears follow your passion, find your passion. It's like a cliche, it's everywhere. The difference is get really good at it. Like, get so good at it. And everyone always misses that point. You can be as passionate as you want about tennis, but if you're not really good at tennis, no one's going to care. And no one's going to take note. And I think that's often missed, that not only do you need to find what you're passionate about, you need to turn it into an expertise, which is undeniable. And that requires the hard work. That requires the work ethic. That requires the early mornings. That requires the training in whatever field you want to be. And that's going to make you successful.
Buy a plane, man. Buy a jet that can get you to go places. I'm not bragging when I say I'm doing this. Hopefully people find this inspirational and they don't think that I'm just an arrogant, cocky, listen to him bragging about his jet. I'm just telling you, like, you don't get that much money by being stupid with money. So I'm sitting here saying, do I do this or do I do the jet? It's not like I'm thoughtful with it when it comes to money. Do I put the $50 million in apartments, which is my favorite investment, or do I buy the jet? And my decision to get rid of 50 to own the jet is that it can connect me with the world. It can help me meet people. The old Grant would not have done this. I wasn't thinking big enough. I was thinking that if I save my money, that if I'm just save the pennies, save the money, pay attention to the money, clip the coupons, do everything on the cheap, right? Buy everything on sale, buy low and sell high. All that old adage of our parents.
Scarcity mentality.
Totally. Okay. If I do that, then I'll be better off. And the reality is, if you study the wealthiest, I don't mean Bill Gates and Warren Buffett. I mean, if you study Goldman Sachs, that's where the real wealth is. Okay. Study the wealthiest. You're talking about Vanguard controls $5 trillion of ETFs. That's money. There's endless amounts of money. Like, I don't know what the Queen controls, but it's freaking massive. Or the Putin money. You're not talking about all that dark money, all the black in the shadows money. So there's so much money on this planet. You got to look at, how does Coca-Cola make a decision to buy 3 or 4 or 5 jets? Because they want to move their executives around the world to make sure they have their products in the front of the shelves. So that's how I made a decision to do this. Not based on what 98% of the people think, but what 1 or 2% of the population thinks. Like, I asked my accountant, he says, don't do it, doesn't work. I asked my lawyer, don't do it, it's a liability. I asked a couple of rich people, don't do it, it doesn't make sense. I asked a billionaire, he's like, yeah, you should definitely do it. And I said, huh? He's like, you should definitely do it. You have clients all over the world, you want to reach 7 billion people, money is useless. I said, huh? He's like, money is useless until it is used, right? You don't need money, dude. You need people. He's like, people have the next money you want, right? And I was like, this was mind-boggling for me. Like it just, you see, when truth hits me, I don't fight it. Like I'm just like, okay, that's real for me.
Find some trusted critics, people that care about you and love you. There's some things that keeps us from growing and getting out of ruts. Number one, we identify with feedback. We take it personal when someone wants to give us some feedback on where we are falling short and tell us about our blind spots. We want to have everything being positive about us. We're not perfect. It hurts. I have a friend who's a trusted critic. I don't like him, but I love him. He doesn't tell me the things I want to hear. He tells me what I need to hear so I can grow. It hurts. It hurts when he put me on the hot seat. I can't stand it. But that's the only way that I can grow. And I'm glad that he loves me enough to risk our friendship to tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear.
High performers are not dissatisfied strivers.
They're not. They're happy. High performers are happier than their peers. We all believe that to get the top, it's going to be lonely at the top. And we all believe you have to grind and kill yourself to get there. Yeah. And that's completely wrong. And the data proves it worldwide, which is, I think, just overcoming a lot of people's biases about how you work today. Because right now, especially today, like, grind on social media is so popular.
Or hustle.
And by the way, none of the top 15% of high performers worldwide identify with those words. They literally don't. We asked them, we did a whole keyword analysis.
Yep.
This was actually pretty cool. And high performers explicitly say, these are the 3 driving feelings. If we said there was a high performance state, it's driven from these 3 things. Number 1, full engagement.
Yes.
Number 2, joy.
Yes.
And number 3, confidence.
Yes.
That's what they relate with, okay? That's where it's coming from. It's a joyous journey, not a dissatisfied one. And I had this conversation in the book because I kind of maybe frame it this way. Each of these chapters opens with a vignette of somebody I worked with or a situation that I was in that demonstrated high performance. In this particular situation, I'm walking on stage, thousands of people, after a very famous musician was out there and was telling the audience that person's secret to success. Remember, thousands of people.
Yes.
Their secret to that person, their whole speech, their secret to success was never settle. Never settle. Nothing is enough. Never settle. And never be satisfied. Never be satisfied. Always demand more. And I'm like, oh, my second slide, which was going to be on Jumbotrons in like 80-point text, was strive satisfied. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to dispel this for all these thousands of people. I was totally freaked out.
Yeah.
But what I had to explain to people was not only the data, but it's this. If you're never satisfied, I mean, is it true that life is precious? If it's true that life is precious, and you could be gone tomorrow, do you really want to think, you know what, I just never felt fulfilled? I never allowed myself to have a moment of credit. I never allowed myself to have a moment of peace. I never allowed myself to look at that and say, good job. That's not the way to live life. Right. I think just at a spiritual level, it's a bad move. And this book doesn't really go into a lot of that. It's more about the science and the heart stuff. But I think it's really important that people realize your job is to strive satisfied. And if you strive satisfied more often, you will be more of a high performer. And if you never give yourself credit, you're always beating up on yourself, you're always thinking that's not perfect enough, then what's going to happen? Dissatisfied people burn out and they quit more often than satisfied strivers. So take joy in the moment, engage with what you're doing, allow credit and satisfaction and joy to come in. You can always be improving.
Of course.
But be improving joyfully.
Yes.
And if you're improving joyfully, then you're learning, you feel curious, you feel engaged, the joy is there, you'll get more confident because you're like, I'm going to learn through this anyway, this is going to be great. Because this thing is all over social media right now, like, grind, work, whatever. And I'm like, it's popular and I see why that happens and I see why it's catchy. It's just not scientifically valid.
Stop scaring yourself. How often do you terrorize yourself with your own thoughts? You get into absolute terror, and it's only coming from your thoughts. Nobody out there is doing a thing. Sometimes it's an old family pattern. Sometimes we get new things. I would like people, when you have time, to make a list of your fears. Make a list of your fears. And then give yourself the opportunity to turn each fear into a positive affirmation. Turn each one into something positive. And remember, always you are in charge. You are always in charge. See, one idle thought doesn't make a whole lot of difference. Thoughts are like drops of water. You drop a drop of water and it doesn't mean much. But if you keep dropping and keep dropping, you get a puddle on the floor, and then you can get a little pond and a lake, and finally you can create an ocean. And with our own thoughts, we can drown in a sea of negativity, or we can float on the ocean of life. And it's up to us. The thoughts we think accumulate. And what sort of puddles are you standing in? Or are you up to here? Or are you up to here and trying to paddle? Now, what are you doing to yourself?
The being able to survive something is actually a big part of being able to find that next wave of joy. You appreciate smaller things, right? Like
many times you will have angst and worry about things and put yourself in a state when the other person really isn't even thinking about you. So learning that I could specifically determine for myself what the boundaries were for me, what I wanted to do, give my money, give my time, give of my service to who I wanted to give it to when I did, that I get to make that decision. And just because you get 100 requests a week doesn't mean you have to try to fulfill all of that. Just because you have all of these demands on your time and on you doesn't mean that you have to say yes. You get to decide because you're the master of your fate. The captain of your soul, as William Ernest Henley said in Invictus. And understanding that really changed the meaning of my life in that I was no longer driven by what other people wanted me to do, but took charge of my own destiny, making choices based upon what do I feel is the next right move for me.
And they've made it in one generation. When we look at the wealthiest people in America today, Warren Buffett, Michael Dell, of course, Bill Gates, Paul Allen, and the Walton family, all first-generation multi-billionaires. We have a $12 trillion economy today that is growing at the rate of $500 to $600 billion a year, and all that money is going through somebody's fingers, and your job is to make sure it goes through yours and some of it sticks. Is that a good goal for today? And my job is to show you how to do it. The good news is that all the answers have been found. Self-made millionaires have been studied exhaustively. They've been analyzed. They've been interviewed by the hundreds of thousands and millions. And what we know is exactly who they are and what they do and how they think and how they tick and the decisions they make and the things that they do and they don't do. And the wonderful thing is this, if you do what other successful people do, you eventually get the same result that they do. Now, some people say, well, I started off without any money and I don't have any money now. Well, join the crowd. Nobody's got any money. Most people are broke up into their 40s and 50s. So if you're broke today, you're just one of the gang. The only question is, do you stay there? And the answer is no. Now, when I started off in this many years ago, I came from very poor beginnings. I did not graduate from high school. I finished in the half of the class that makes the top half possible. When I left school, I dropped out of high school. I could only get laboring jobs. I was told, by the way, if you don't get a good education, you won't do well in life. Don't get good grades, you won't get a good job. Don't go to college, you won't do well, and so on. And I believed that for a long time until I found there's hundreds of thousands, millions of people who dropped out of high school who went on to become millionaires and billionaires as well.